Hi guys, tonight we step quietly into a world that existed long before written records, long before cities, kingdoms, and the familiar stories of human history. Imagine yourself lying beside a small ancient fire, the soft glow moving across the walls of a prehistoric cave. Outside, a vast landscape stretches beneath a dark sky. A cool wind moves through silent forests. Distant animals call across open valleys, and somewhere beyond the shelter, early humans are resting after another day of survival. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And as you settle into this journey, tell me where you are listening from and what time it is where you live. It is always fascinating to imagine people around the world quietly travelling through history together. Now, dim the lights and let us begin. You step into a world from around 90,000 years ago, a time when humanity was still living far away from the civilizations that would later define our species. There are no roads stretching across the land, no villages with stone houses, no written words carved into monuments. Instead, you find yourself standing in a landscape shaped by nature itself. The earth of this distant age is familiar, yet strangely different. You are living during the later part of the Pleistocene period, a time marked by repeated cycles of colder and warmer climates. The planet is not completely covered in ice, but glaciers expand and retreat across many regions, changing landscapes and influencing where animals and humans can survive. In some places, cold winds sweep across open grasslands. In others, forests grow thick around rivers and valleys. The air feels different here. You notice the smell of damp earth after a morning mist. You feel the cold touch of the wind against your skin. You hear branches moving gently above you and the distant footsteps of animals travelling through the landscape. The humans around you are not strangers to this environment. They are early members of our species, Homo sapiens, who have already developed remarkable abilities to adapt, cooperate, and learn from the world around them. They are not living as isolated individuals. They move in small groups, depending on one another for survival. A person gathering plants today may share knowledge that was learned from parents and grandparents many years before. A skilled hunter may recognize the signs of animal movement because previous generations taught them how to observe the land carefully. Life is built on memory. Today, information can be stored instantly on devices and accessed within seconds. But 90,000 years ago, knowledge lived inside human minds and communities. Every lesson had to be remembered. Every survival skill had to be practiced. Every mistake could become a lesson for the next generation. You walk with a small group through an ancient valley. The people around you wear simple coverings made from animal skins, protecting themselves from cold nights and changing weather. Their clothing is practical, created from materials available in their surroundings. There are no factories, no woven modern fabrics, and no stores where supplies can be purchased. Everything they use must come from careful observation and patient work. A person carries a simple stone tool. The tool may look ordinary to your modern eyes, but it represents thousands of years of human improvement. Sharp stone flakes can help cut plants, process food, and prepare materials. Larger stones can be shaped for different purposes. These tools are not created randomly. They require knowledge of which rocks are useful and how they can be shaped effectively. Archaeologists have discovered many examples of stone technology from this broad period, showing that early humans were already skilled tool makers. Some communities created tools with careful planning, choosing materials and shaping them according to specific needs. A small fire burns near a natural rock shelter. The flames crackle softly. Smoke rises toward the stone ceiling. Around the fire, people rest, prepare food, repair tools, and share quiet moments together. The warmth is more than physical comfort. Fire creates a center for human connection. You notice how important this simple flame is. Today, we can turn on a heater with a button, but ancient humans had to protect every spark. Fire required attention. It needed fuel, care, and knowledge. A forgotten flame could mean a colder night and a more difficult morning. Outside the shelter, the landscape continues moving. Animals travel through the valleys and grasslands. Herds of deer move carefully through open spaces. Wild horses run across wide plains. In colder regions, large animals such as mammoths, reindeer, and ancient bison become important parts of the environment. Early humans do not see nature as something separate from themselves. They are part of a living system. They watch animal behavior, understand seasonal patterns, and follow the movements of resources. Their survival depends on patience. A successful journey may come from noticing a small detail, such as footprints in soft ground or changes in the behavior of animals nearby. A quirky detail from this ancient period is that some early humans used natural pigments, such as red ochre made from minerals, for purposes that may have gone beyond simple decoration. Archaeologists have found evidence suggesting that humans were already experimenting with symbolic behaviors. Although the exact meanings remain uncertain, historians still debate whether these early uses of pigments represented personal decoration, social identity, ritual activities, or other forms of expression. You look around the shelter again. The people here are living in a world without written history, but they are not without stories. Their memories are carried through voices, gestures, and traditions. Around the fire, they may describe places they have travelled, animals they have seen, and lessons they want younger members of the group to remember. The night becomes quieter. The stars above the ancient landscape shine without the glow of modern cities. The wind moves through the valley. Somewhere beyond the shelter, animals continue their journeys through the darkness. You begin to understand that 90,000 years ago was not simply a time of struggle. It was a time of learning. Every stone tool, every shared meal, every carefully protected fire represented a small step in the long human journey. These people lived before history was written, but their lives created the foundation for everything that would come later. As you rest beside the ancient fire, surrounded by the sounds of the prehistoric world, you realize that the story of humanity did not begin with monuments or kingdoms. It began quietly, with people sitting together, with hands shaping stone, with eyes watching the stars, with humans learning how to survive on a changing earth. You continue walking deeper into the ancient world, leaving behind the small shelter where the first fire still glows softly. The night has passed, and a pale morning light slowly spreads across the landscape. Around you, the world of 90,000 years ago begins to awaken. The air is cool and fresh. You feel the cold breeze moving across a wide valley. The ground beneath your feet is uneven, covered with grass, stones, and patches of soil shaped by countless seasons. Far away, mountains rise beneath a quiet sky, their peaks touched by the first light of the morning. This is Earth during the Ice Age. But the Ice Age was not one endless frozen winter. It was a long period of changing conditions, with colder and warmer phases appearing over thousands of years. Some regions became covered with ice sheets, while others remained open grasslands, forests, or dry landscapes where humans and animals adapted to changing environments. You look across the land and begin to understand how much the environment controlled every part of human life. There are no farms here, there are no permanent cities. There are no large storage buildings filled with food. Instead, survival depends on movement, observation, and cooperation. Early humans must understand the rhythm of nature. They must know when plants become available, when animals migrate, where water can be found, and where a safe shelter can be created. The landscape itself is their guide. You walk beside a small group of hunter-gatherers travelling through a valley. They move carefully, not because they are afraid, but because they are constantly paying attention. Every sound may carry information. Every footprint may reveal a passing animal. Every change in the weather may influence their next decision. A person kneels beside the ground and studies marks left in the soil. You notice the patience in this moment. They are reading the landscape like a story. A broken branch may show where an animal passed. A cluster of tracks may reveal the direction of a herd. A change in plant growth may indicate the presence of water nearby. Today, many people use maps, GPS devices, and weather applications to understand the world around them. Ancient humans had none of these tools. Their knowledge came from years of experience and careful attention. Their environment was not something they simply lived in. It was something they studied every day. You continue through different parts of this ancient planet. In parts of Africa, where many early Homo sapiens populations lived. The climate could shift between wetter and drier conditions. Grasslands expanded and contracted. Rivers changed their paths. Forests grew and disappeared depending on rainfall patterns. In Europe, Neanderthals lived through some of the harshest Ice Age environments. They adapted to colder climates, using strong bodies, advanced hunting methods, and cooperation to survive in regions where winters could be severe. In Asia, human groups moved through varied landscapes, from open plains to forested areas, following resources and adapting to local conditions. Human survival was never based on one single ability. It came from flexibility. A person who could adapt had a better chance of surviving. Researchers continue to question exactly how different human populations interacted with their environments and how quickly certain adaptations developed. Some historians suggest that human success came mainly from advanced cooperation and communication, while others emphasize the importance of technology, climate changes, or biological adaptations. You walk further and find signs of daily life near a temporary campsite. Small pieces of stone lie scattered around the area. These are traces of ancient work. Someone sat here shaping tools, perhaps during a quiet afternoon while others gathered food nearby. The sound of stone striking stone fills the air. A gentle rhythm, a careful process. The person holding the stone understands how much pressure to apply and where to strike. One wrong movement could break the material. One successful strike could create a sharp edge useful for many tasks. A simple tool represents knowledge passed through generations. The people around you are not making random objects. They are continuing traditions created by countless ancestors before them. Nearby, another person prepares animal skins. The work requires patience. The skins must be cleaned and processed before they can become useful coverings or materials. These tasks are ordinary parts of life, but they reveal something important. Survival was not only about hunting, it was about everything that happened afterward. Preparing materials, maintaining tools, collecting firewood, finding edible plants, protecting children, teaching younger members of the group. Every person contributed. You notice children moving near the shelter. They are not simply playing, they are learning. A child watches an older person shape a tool. Another follows an adult while gathering plants. Through observation, children slowly understand the rules of their environment. There are no classrooms with walls. The entire landscape becomes a place of learning. The river teaches where water can be found. The forest teaches which plants are useful. The animals teach movement and seasons. The elders teach memory. One lesser known detail about prehistoric life is that some archaeological sites show evidence that early humans transported materials from distant locations, suggesting they were willing to travel significant distances to obtain useful stones and resources. This reveals planning and connection across landscapes that were much larger than a single campsite. The world of 90,000 years ago was not a world where humans simply wandered without direction. They travelled with purpose. They followed opportunities. They remembered places. They returned to familiar locations. As evening approaches, you return toward a sheltered area between rocks. The temperature begins to drop. The warmth of the day disappears, and the familiar need for fire returns. Smoke rises into the evening air. The group gathers close. The sounds of the landscape slowly change. Birds become quieter. Wind moves through the trees. Somewhere in the distance, animals call across the valley. You sit beside the fire and watch the flames move. The people around you speak softly. Their conversations are simple, yet meaningful. They may discuss tomorrow's journey, the location of animals, or the changing weather. Their world is difficult, but it is not empty. It is filled with knowledge, relationships, and memories. The ancient landscape around you feels enormous, but these small groups of humans are learning how to belong within it. They do not control nature, they listen to it, and slowly, across thousands of years, that ability to observe, adapt, and cooperate will shape the future of humanity. Tonight, as you rest beside the ancient fire, you can still hear the quiet rhythm of this forgotten world. The wind, the flames, the footsteps of people who lived before history began. You wake again beneath the ancient sky, continuing your quiet journey through a world that existed before written memories, before kingdoms rose, and before humans began building permanent cities. The fire from the previous night has faded into glowing embers, and the first light of morning gently touches the landscape. You step outside the shelter. The air is colder now. You feel the morning chill against your skin as you look across the valley. A thin mist rests above the ground, slowly disappearing as sunlight reaches the grass. Nearby, a few people prepare for another day of movement. They gather their simple belongings, check their tools, and observe the environment around them. This is the life of early human travelers. Around 90,000 years ago, many human groups lived as mobile hunter-gatherers. They did not stay in one place permanently because their survival depended on the movement of natural resources. Food, water, weather, and animal migrations all influenced where they travelled. Their world was shaped by movement. You follow a small group walking across the ancient landscape. They carry only what they need. Stone tools, wooden hunting equipment, animal skins, food gathered from previous days. There are no heavy possessions because every item must be carried by hand. A person's most valuable belongings are often the tools they know how to create and the knowledge they carry inside their minds. The group walks along a river. The sound of flowing water fills the valley. Birds move between trees. Small animals leave traces along the riverbank. The people stop occasionally, looking carefully at their surroundings. They are searching for information. Where are the animals moving? Which plants are available? Has the weather changed? Is this a safe place to rest, to modernize? This may look like simple wandering, but it is actually a complex way of living. Every journey requires planning and memory. A person must remember landscapes they visited before. They must know where resources can be found during different seasons. They must understand that a place that provides food during summer may become difficult during winter. Researchers studying prehistoric migration continue to examine how early humans moved across continents. Scholars remain divided on the exact routes and timing of many ancient migrations, because evidence from this distant period is incomplete and constantly being updated through new archaeological discoveries. You continue following the group across open land. The landscape changes slowly. A grassy plain stretches toward distant hills. Herds of animals move far away, following their own ancient paths. These animals are not simply part of the scenery. They are connected to the survival of human communities. The people observe them carefully. They watch how animals behave. They learn where herds travel. They understand that patience is often more important than speed. A successful hunt does not begin when a weapon is thrown. It begins much earlier. It begins with watching. It begins with learning. It begins with understanding the habits of another living creature. You notice a group member examining tracks into soft earth. The footprints reveal movement from the previous night. The person studies their size, direction, and depth. This information helps the group understand what passed through the area. Tracking is a skill built through years of experience. Today, many people can order food instantly or travel across the world within hours, but these ancient travelers depended on a different kind of intelligence. They needed to read signs from nature that most modern people rarely notice. The shape of a footprint, the direction of the wind, the condition of plants, the sound of distant animals, the colour of the sky before changing weather. The entire world was a source of information. You walk further and reach a temporary campsite. The group begins creating a place to rest. They choose an area with protection from wind and access to water. Some people collect branches, others prepare the ground. Someone begins working with stone, creating tools for daily tasks. The campsite is not a village. It may only exist for a short period. But even temporary places contain signs of human organisation. People have roles. Some search for food, some care for children, some maintain tools, some prepare shelter. Everyone contributes. The survival of the group depends on cooperation. A lesser-known detail about prehistoric societies is that archaeological evidence suggests early humans were capable of caring for injured or older members of their communities. Some remains show individuals who survive serious injuries for long periods, meaning others likely helped them when they could no longer fully support themselves. This tells you something important. Human survival was never only about strength, it was also about compassion. Around the campsite, you see children learning from adults. They collect small objects, they imitate movements, they watch how tools are made. Learning happens naturally through participation. A child does not memorize written instructions. Instead, knowledge is passed through watching, listening, and practicing. An older member of the group may explain where certain plants grow, or how to recognize signs of approaching weather. These lessons are not written anywhere, but they are valuable enough to shape future generations. The afternoon becomes warmer. The group rests near the river. You hear quiet conversations and the sound of simple tools being repaired. A person smooths a wooden handle. Another checks the edge of a stone tool. These ordinary moments are easy to overlook, but they reveal the true nature of prehistoric life. Most days were not dramatic. Most days were filled with small tasks: finding food, maintaining equipment, protecting warmth, sharing knowledge, caring for family. The story of ancient humans is often imagined as a constant struggle against danger, but much of life was probably made of peaceful routines. As the sun begins to lower, the group prepares for another evening. A fire is built. Smoke rises into the fading light. The smell of burning wood spreads through the campsite. You sit nearby and watch shadows move across the ground. The people around you have no idea what the future will bring. They do not know about cities, writing, science, or technology. They only know the world they experience today. But within these small communities, something powerful is happening. Humans are learning, they are adapting. They are building connections that will continue across thousands of generations. The same curiosity that leads them to explore valleys and rivers will one day help humans cross oceans, study distant planets, and create civilizations. But tonight, they are simply travelers beneath the stars. They rest beside the fire. They listen to the wind. They prepare for another morning in the ancient world. And you continue walking beside them, deeper into the forgotten age before history began. The morning slowly fades into another peaceful day in the ancient world. You continue your journey alongside a small human group living approximately 90,000 years ago, moving through a landscape where every valley, river, and rocky hillside carries information about survival. The path leads you toward a line of limestone cliffs rising above the surrounding land. From a distance, the cliffs appear quiet and empty, but as you approach, you notice signs that these natural formations have become important places for human life. A sheltered opening appears between the rocks, protected from the strongest winds. Inside, the air is cooler, and the stone walls create a feeling of safety. You have reached a natural rock shelter. This is one of the places where early humans could rest, prepare food, maintain tools, and protect themselves from changing weather around 90,000 years ago. Humans did not build houses like those seen in later periods. Instead, they used what the environment provided. Caves, overhangs, and sheltered areas became temporary homes during journeys across the landscape. You step inside. The first thing you notice is the temperature. Outside, the wind moves across the valley, carrying the chill of the open land. Inside the shelter, the air feels calmer. The stone walls block some of the cold, creating a more comfortable place for people to gather. You hear the quiet sounds of daily life, stone striking stone, wood being shaped, soft voices speaking around the fire, footsteps moving across the rocky ground. The smell of smoke remains in the air from the previous evening. The scent mixes with the smell of animal skins, dry plants, and the natural scent of the cave itself for these ancient people. A shelter was more than a place to escape bad weather. It was a centre of community. You watch as several people organise their small living area. Near the entrance, someone prepares materials collected from the surrounding landscape. Further inside, a fire burns carefully. The smoke rises toward an opening above, slowly disappearing into the outside air. The fire is treated with attention. Wood must be collected. Flames must be maintained. The right materials must be chosen. A fire that burns well can provide warmth, light, protection, and a place where food can be prepared. Archaeological evidence shows that early humans were using fire long before this period. Although the exact ways different groups controlled and maintained fires varied across regions, the ability to use fire changed human life by extending activity into colder nights and allowing people to survive in environments that would otherwise be extremely difficult. You sit near the flames and watch the group settle into their routines. One person works on a stone tool, another prepares gathered plants, someone repairs a piece of animal skin. These tasks may appear simple, but they represent a complex understanding of materials and techniques. A stone tool is not just a rock, it is the result of knowledge. The person creating it understands which stone can produce a sharp edge. They know how to strike it carefully. They know how the finished piece can be used. Nearby, you notice small pieces of stone scattered across the ground. These fragments are evidence of past activities. Archaeologists often study such remains because they reveal where people worked, rested, and processed materials. The cave floor becomes a quiet record of human activity. Every broken stone, every piece of charcoal, every mark left behind, together. These details help reconstruct moments from lives that existed thousands of generations ago. You look deeper into the shelter. Families rest together. Children stay close to adults. Older members of the group remain nearby. Life inside the shelter is based on cooperation. There is no single person controlling every decision. Instead, survival depends on shared knowledge and relationships. A young child watches an adult preparing tools. The child may not understand everything yet, but observation is the beginning of learning. Over time, simple actions become familiar. The child learns which plants are useful, how to treat materials, and how to move safely through the landscape. The entire community becomes a teacher. A fascinating detail from prehistoric archaeology is that some ancient shelters contain evidence of repeated visits over long periods, showing that certain places were remembered and returned to by human groups. These locations were not permanent homes in the modern sense, but they could become familiar spaces connected to seasonal movement. You begin to understand that these people were not simply wandering without direction. They had relationships with places. A valley where water was reliable, a cave that offered protection, a hillside where useful plants grew, a path followed by migrating animals. The landscape became part of their memory. Researchers continue exploring how much symbolic meaning early humans attached to specific locations. Some specialists believe certain shelters may have held social or cultural importance beyond simple survival, while others suggest that practical needs explain most patterns of use. The answer is still being studied. As evening approaches, the shelter becomes warmer. The fire glows brighter against the stone walls. You notice the peaceful rhythm of the group. There is no rush. There are no artificial sounds. The pace of life follows the movement of nature. Someone adds wood to the fire. A quiet conversation begins. A child listens closely. An older person shares knowledge a nid many years earlier. This moment feels surprisingly familiar. Across thousands of years, humans have gathered around warmth and shared stories. The technology changes, the surroundings change, but the desire to connect remains. Today, many people gather around screens instead of fires. We share information through machines instead of voices carried across a shelter. Yet the basic human need to communicate and belong has remained remarkably consistent. You step outside for a moment. The night sky stretches above the ancient landscape. There are no city lights, no roads, no buildings, only stars shining above mountains and valleys that have existed for countless ages. The sounds of the wilderness surround you. The distant call of an animal, the movement of wind through grass, the quiet crackling of the fire behind you. You return to the shelter and sit among the people who lived before history began. Their world was challenging, but it was also filled with warmth, cooperation, and moments of peace. Inside this simple stone shelter, humanity was learning one of its most important lessons. Survival was not only about finding food or escaping danger, it was about creating a place where people could care for one another. A small fire, protected space, a shared meal, a community. These were the foundations that carried humans forward through the long journey of time. The morning arrives gently over the ancient landscape, and you continue walking with the people who lived nearly 90,000 years ago. The familiar shelter remains behind you, its stone walls holding memories of fires, conversations, and quiet moments from many nights before. You follow the group as they move toward an area where suitable stones can be found. The journey is calm. The sun rises slowly above the valley. The cold air begins to soften, and the first sounds of the day appear around you. Birds move between distant trees. Small animals search for food among the grass. The wind carries the scent of earth and plants across the open land. Today, you are going to discover one of the most important parts of prehistoric life. Tools. To modern eyes, a small stone object may seem ordinary. It may look like a simple piece of rock, but for early humans, a carefully shaped stone tool represented knowledge, experience, and survival. It was an extension of the human hand. You watch as members of the group search through the landscape. They do not choose stones randomly. They examine different pieces carefully. Some rocks break in useful ways, creating sharp edges. Others are too soft or too fragile. The ability to recognize valuable materials comes from generations of observation and practice. A person picks up a stone and turns it slowly in their hand. They examine its shape. They consider how it might be transformed. Then they begin working. A sharp sound echoes through the quiet valley. Stone touches stone. A small fragment breaks away. Another strike follows. Slowly, the shape begins to change. This process requires patience. Too much force can destroy the material. Too little force may not create the desired edge. The toolmaker must understand the hidden possibilities inside the stone. Archaeological discoveries from this period show that early humans created a variety of stone tools for different purposes. These tools were used for cutting, processing materials, preparing food, and working with other resources from the environment. The technology may appear simple compared with modern machines, but it represented an important achievement in human development. You sit beside the toolmaker and observe closely. The hands are experienced, the movements are controlled. The knowledge is passed through practice, not written instructions. There are no manuals, no classrooms, no videos showing each step. Instead, skills are learned through watching and repeating. A child nearby observes the process carefully. Perhaps years later, that same child will teach another generation how to shape stone. In this way, knowledge travels through time, carried by human memory. You notice another person creating a different kind of equipment. A wooden tool is being prepared. The material comes from the surrounding environment. Branches are selected, shaped, and adjusted. Wood can become part of hunting equipment, carrying tools or everyday objects. Although wood rarely survives for thousands of years because it decays easily, archaeological evidence and experimental studies help researchers understand how important wooden tools were in prehistoric life. The world of early humans was not made only of stone. It was built from everything nature provided. Wood, bone, plants, animal skins, minerals. Every resource had a purpose. You continue exploring the campsite near the fire. Someone works with bone materials left from animals. Bones can be shaped into useful objects, including points, needles, or other tools. These materials reveal the creativity of early humans and their ability to use many parts of the environment. One remarkable detail from prehistoric archaeology is that some bone tools show careful shaping and polishing, suggesting that people were not simply using whatever objects they found. They were transforming materials with intention and skill. A small object could require significant time and effort. This tells you something important about the ancient world. Time was measured differently. People were not rushing from one appointment to another. They followed the rhythm of survival. A tool could take hours to create. A shelter could take careful preparation. A journey could depend on watching the weather. Patience was not optional. It was part of life. You look around the valley and imagine how different this world feels from today. Modern people often replace broken objects without thinking. A damaged tool can be exchanged quickly, but for ancient humans, each carefully made object had value. A tool represented effort, it represented knowledge, it represented time. Researchers continue examining how early human technology developed and how different groups influenced one another. Some experts propose that certain innovations spread through contact between communities, while others suggest that similar solutions appeared independently because humans face similar challenges in different environments. The exact story is still being uncovered. As the afternoon continues, the group begins using the newly created tools. Someone prepares food, someone cuts plant materials, someone repairs equipment. The tools become part of everyday life. They are not displayed as special objects. They are used. They are carried. They are depended upon. You follow the group toward the edge of the valley where signs of animal movement appear. A person carries a wooden spear. The weapon is simple, but it represents planning and understanding. Successful hunting requires cooperation, knowledge of animal behavior, and careful preparation. The group does not rush forward. They observe, they wait, they learn from the landscape. The same intelligence used to create tools is also used to understand the world around them. As evening returns, you walk back toward the shelter. The people carry their tools with them. The stone edges catch the final light of the setting sun. You realize that these small objects tell a much larger story. They tell the story of human creativity. They show that survival was not only about physical strength, it was about imagination, it was about problem solving, it was about seeing possibilities where others might only see ordinary materials. The fire begins glowing again inside the shelter. You sit near the warmth and listen to the familiar sounds of the ancient evening. Stone tools rest nearby. Wooden equipment lies beside the entrance. The voices of the group move softly through the darkness. Outside, the prehistoric landscape continues its endless cycle. Animals travel, rivers flow, stars appear. And inside this simple shelter, human knowledge continues to grow. Long before cities, machines, and written history, people were already creating, learning, and improving. The first chapters of humanity were not written with ink. They were shaped with stone. The next morning arrives quietly, and you continue your journey through the ancient world of 90,000 years ago. The stone tools created beside the shelter remain nearby, resting among the other objects that support daily life. But today, you begin to notice something even more important than the tools themselves. You begin to understand the relationship between early humans and nature. The people around you are not simply living in the landscape, they are learning from it. You step outside the shelter and look across the valley. The morning air carries the smell of wet soil and wild plants. A gentle breeze moves through the grass, creating waves across the open land. In the distance, animals travel through familiar paths that have been used for generations. The people notice everything: a change in the direction of birds, a new set of footprints, the condition of plants, the movement of clouds. To survive in this world, humans must become careful observers. Their knowledge comes from thousands of small discoveries. You follow a group member walking along the edge of a river. They stop frequently, looking at the ground, touching plants, and examining signs left behind by animals. To you, the landscape may appear quiet and ordinary, but to them, it is filled with information. The river tells stories, the forest tells stories, the animals tell stories. Every part of nature provides clues. Researchers studying prehistoric societies have found that hunter-gatherer communities developed detailed knowledge of their environments. They understood seasonal patterns, animal behavior, and the availability of different resources. This knowledge allowed small groups of humans to survive in environments that could change dramatically over time. You watch as the group searches for food. Some people collect plants growing near the riverbank. They know which parts can be used. They know when certain plants appear. They know where to return during different seasons. Gathering is not random. It is a skill. A person must remember locations, recognize changes, and understand the relationship between plants and weather nearby. Children walk with older members of the group. They are learning. A child picks up a plant and looks toward an adult for guidance. The adult shows which plants are useful and which should be avoided. This simple moment is part of a much larger process of passing knowledge from one generation to the next. There are no written books describing the landscape. The lessons exist in memory. A person's experience becomes part of the community's shared understanding. You continue towards an open grassland where the group pauses. The people look toward a distant herd of animals. They do not immediately move closer. Instead, they observe. They study the direction of movement. They notice the condition of the animals. They consider the environment around them. This patience is one of the greatest survival skills of prehistoric humans. The world rewards those who pay attention. A modern person might quickly search for information online or use technology to predict conditions. Ancient humans had another method. They developed a deep awareness of patterns around them. They watched, they remembered, they adapted. A fascinating detail from archaeological research is that some prehistoric communities appear to have selected specific locations repeatedly because those places offered valuable combinations of resources, such as water, food, and useful materials. These repeated visits suggest that ancient humans had strong memories of landscapes and understood the importance of returning to productive areas. You begin to see the land differently. A valley is not just a valley. It is a place where water flows. A forest is not just a collection of trees. It is a source of materials, food, and shelter. A mountain pass is not just a path. It is a route connecting different regions. The landscape becomes a map stored inside the human mind. As the day continues, the group travels toward another area where animals have recently passed. You notice tracks pressed into soft ground. The people kneel and examine them. They look at the size and shape. They consider how fresh the marks are. This ability to track animals required tremendous concentration. A successful tracker needed to understand not only the footprints but also the behaviour behind them. Was the animal moving quickly or slowly? Was it travelling alone or with others? Was it searching for water? Was it following a seasonal route? These questions guided decisions. Experts continue investigating how much symbolic thinking and planning were involved in prehistoric tracking behaviours. Some researchers view tracking as a highly developed form of ecological knowledge, while others suggest it may also have influenced early forms of abstract reasoning and communication. The exact details remain a fascinating area of study. You return with the group as the sun begins lowering. The temperature cools, the shadows become longer. The smell of smoke appears again as the fire is prepared. The daily cycle continues. Food is shared. Tools are maintained. Children stay close. Stories are exchanged. You sit beside the fire and listen. The voices around you are not loud, they're calm, they carry memories of places visited and lessons learned. Perhaps someone describes a distant valley. Perhaps someone remembers where certain animals travelled last season. Perhaps an elder teaches younger members how to recognise signs of changing weather. These conversations are not entertainment alone. They are survival. Every story may contain useful information. Every memory may help the group in the future. Today, people often separate learning from daily life. We go to schools, read books, and study information through organised systems for ancient humans. Learning was everywhere. It happened while walking, gathering, preparing food, and sitting beside a fire. The entire world was their classroom. You look beyond the shelter as darkness settles over the valley. The stars appear one by one. The same sky that ancient humans looked upon still exists today. Thousands of generations have passed, but the stars remain. The people around you knew nothing about the future civilizations that would rise. They did not know their descendants would build cities, explore oceans, and study distant planets. They only knew the world directly around them, and they understood it deeply. Their survival came from a quiet relationship with nature. They listened to the wind, they followed the animals, they remembered the land, they shared knowledge. As you rest near the fire, you feel the peaceful rhythm of this ancient life, a world without clocks, a world without machines, a world where every day began with observation and ended with gratitude for another moment of survival. The journey continues, and tomorrow you will follow these ancient humans deeper into the routines, challenges, and quiet discoveries that shaped life before history began. The quiet morning returns to the ancient valley, and you continue walking alongside the small human community that has become your guide through this forgotten world. The fire from the previous night is now only a faint collection of warm ashes. Thin smoke rises slowly into the cool air, blending with the mist that rests above the ground. You watch as the group begins another day. There is no sudden rush, no loud signals, no organised schedules. Life moves according to the needs of the environment. A person gathers the remaining firewood. Another checks the stone tools. Someone prepares materials collected from the previous day. Children wake slowly and remain close to their families. This is the daily rhythm of prehistoric life. Around 90,000 years ago, early humans survived through a constant balance between movement and preparation. They depended on hunting, gathering, cooperation, and a deep understanding of their surroundings. Their lives were shaped by seasons, weather, and the availability of resources. You walk with them as they leave the shelter. The morning sunlight touches the landscape. The valley appears peaceful. Tall grasses move gently in the wind. Birds travel above the trees. Small animals search through the vegetation. In the distance, mountains create a quiet boundary around the world these humans know. The group moves toward a familiar area where plants grow near a water source. Gathering food is one of the most important parts of the day. You notice that everyone participates. Some people collect edible plants, others search for roots, seeds, and natural materials. The work is careful and patient. A person does not simply pick everything they find, they recognize differences between plants. They understand which parts can be used and when certain resources become available. The archaeological record provides evidence that hunter-gatherer communities possess detailed environmental knowledge, allowing them to use a wide variety of plant and animal resources. This flexible approach helped humans survive in many different landscapes around the world. You watch as a person carefully removes useful plants and places them into a simple container made from natural materials. The process looks ordinary, but it represents generations of learning. Someone taught them where to search, someone showed them what to recognize, till someone explained how seasons change the landscape. Knowledge traveled through people, not through books, not through machines, through memory. You continue following the group toward the edge of a forest. The environment changes around you. The open grassland becomes mixed with trees and shaded areas. The air feels cooler beneath the branches. The smell of leaves and damp soil becomes stronger. This forest provides many opportunities. Wood for tools, plants for food, materials for shelter, places where animals move. But forests also require careful understanding. A person must know where to walk. They must notice signs of changing weather. They must recognize animal movements. The forest is not silent. You hear branches moving. You hear insects. You hear distant calls from animals hidden among the trees. The people around you do not fear every sound. They listen. They understand that the environment is communicating. A broken branch may reveal movement. A bird call may indicate nearby animals. A change in wind direction may suggest approaching weather. Their senses are constantly connected to the world around them. Today, many people spend much of their lives surrounded by buildings and technology. Ancient humans experienced the environment directly every day. Their survival depended on noticing details that modern life often allows us to ignore. You stop beside a small stream. The group rests. Water flows over stones, creating a gentle sound. Someone repairs a tool, someone shares gathered food. Children explore nearby while staying within sight of adults. These moments reveal an important part of prehistoric communities. Daily life was not only about survival tasks, it was also about relationships. People spent large amounts of time together. They travelled together. They worked together. They rested together. Human cooperation was one of the strongest advantages our species developed. A small but fascinating clue from the past comes from archaeological sites showing that some prehistoric groups carried materials between different locations rather than using only what was immediately available. This suggests that people valued certain resources and planned ahead, even when travelling through unpredictable environments. You imagine the effort involved. A useful stone may have been collected far away. A special material may have been carried during migration. A familiar place may have been remembered across many seasons. These actions reveal planning and connection. The group eventually begins preparing food. The work is shared. Some people process gathered plants. Others prepare materials from animals. The fire becomes the centre of activity. Smoke rises gently. The smell of cooking spreads through the air. You sit nearby and observe the peaceful scene. There is no market where food can be purchased, no storage room filled with supplies. Every meal represents effort. Every meal represents knowledge. The people understand that tomorrow's food depends on today's choices. Researchers continue investigating how prehistoric humans organized their daily activities and divided different responsibilities within groups. Some experts suggest that roles were flexible and changed depending on age, skill, and circumstances, while others explore whether certain patterns of specialization existed in early communities. The evidence continues to reveal new possibilities. As afternoon turns toward evening, the group returns to the shelter. The journey has not been dramatic. There were no great battles, no famous rulers, no monuments, but this ordinary day contains something important. It shows the foundation of human life, the ability to cooperate, the ability to learn, the ability to adapt. You watch as the fire is prepared once again. The same familiar warmth fills the shelter. The same quiet sounds return. Wood cracks softly. Voices move through the darkness. Outside, the ancient landscape rests. Animals continue their journeys. The river continues flowing. The stars begin appearing above the valley. You think about how many ordinary days like this passed before anyone wrote history. Thousands upon thousands of mornings, thousands upon thousands of fierce, countless moments of people caring for one another. The story of humanity was not created only by extraordinary events. It was built through ordinary moments repeated across generations. A person collecting plants, a child learning from an elder, a family sharing food, a group protecting a fire through the night. These simple actions carried humans forward. As you sit beside the ancient flames, you feel the peaceful connection between past and present. The people around you lived in a different world, but their hopes were familiar. They wanted warmth. They wanted safety. They wanted their children to survive. They wanted another sunrise. And beneath the same stars that shine above you tonight, they waited for tomorrow. The morning arrives once again over the ancient valley, and you continue your journey with the people who lived nearly 90,000 years ago. The shelter behind you slowly disappears into the distance as the group moves through the landscape, carrying their tools, supplies, and memories of places they have already visited. Today, you notice a change in their movements. They are not simply travelling, they are searching. The land around them is filled with signs, a broken stem, a mark in the soil, a distant movement among the grass. The people are reading the environment carefully because today may become a hunting day. For early humans, hunting was not only about capturing animals, it was a complex activity requiring planning, cooperation, patience, and a deep understanding of animal behaviour. You walk beside the group as they move quietly across open ground. The morning air is cool, the grass is wet beneath your feet. The sound of footsteps is soft against the earth. Everyone moves with attention. No one wastes energy, no one makes unnecessary movements. The group approaches an area where animals have recently passed. A person kneels beside the ground. You look closer. There are footprints pressed into the soil. The tracker studies them carefully. The size, the direction, the distance between each mark. These details reveal information. The animal was moving this way. It passed here recently. There may be more nearby. Tracking was one of the most valuable skills among hunter-gatherer communities. The archaeological evidence from prehistoric sites, combined with studies of modern hunter-gatherer societies, shows that understanding animal behaviour required extraordinary observation and experience. You follow the tracker deeper into the landscape. The group moves through a mixture of grassland and woodland. The environment is alive. Birds move above the trees. Small animals disappear into the vegetation. The wind carries different scents across the valley. The humans notice these changes. They understand that animals also respond to the environment. A sudden movement, a change in direction, a quiet area where animals usually gather. All of these details matter. You begin to understand that hunting begins long before any encounter with an animal. It begins with knowledge. The group stops near a hill overlooking the valley. They observe from a distance below them. A herd moves slowly across the open land. Perhaps deer, perhaps wild horses, perhaps another species that has followed the same seasonal routes for generations. The hunters do not immediately move. They wait. They study. They plan. This patience separates successful hunters from careless ones. A person must understand distance, wind direction, terrain, and animal behaviour. The group communicates quietly. Some members move into different positions. Others prepare their simple wooden spears and stone tools. The scene is calm. There is no chaos, no unnecessary movement, only careful cooperation. One overlooked insight from prehistoric research is that hunting strategies often required social coordination between several individuals rather than depending only on physical strength. Ancient humans survived because they could combine intelligence, communication, and teamwork. You watch the group working together. Each person has a role. Someone observes, someone prepares equipment, someone watches the surroundings, someone remembers the landscape. Their success depends on everyone contributing. Researchers continue studying how much planning was involved in early hunting practices. Some scientists believe prehistoric humans developed increasingly complex strategies through generations of experience, while others suggest that many techniques evolved gradually through repeated experimentation. The full story of ancient hunting continues to be explored. As the group continues its journey, you notice something important. These people are not separate from nature. They are connected to it. They know the animals they follow. They understand their movements. They respect the difficulty of finding food. The relationship between humans and animals during this period was not the same as modern relationships with wildlife. Survival required using available resources, but it also required understanding the animals as living creatures within the same environment. After several hours, the group returns toward a safer area. The hunt has become only one part of the day. Other tasks continue. Tools must be maintained. Food must be prepared. The fire must be protected. The community must continue functioning. You realize that the image of prehistoric life as constant hunting is incomplete. Most of life was made of preparation. The quiet moments before and after important events, a person repairing a tool, someone collecting materials, a family resting together, the daily work that allowed communities to continue. As evening approaches, the group gathers near the shelter. The fire begins glowing. The smell of smoke fills the air. The people prepare food and share the results of their efforts. Children remain close, watching and learning. An elder explains something quietly. Perhaps a lesson about animals, perhaps a story about a distant journey, perhaps knowledge that has been passed down for many years. You sit beside the fire and listen to the sounds around you. The crackling flames, the voices of the group, the wind moving outside, the distant calls of animals travelling through the darkness. A fascinating discovery from prehistoric archaeology is that some ancient human groups used carefully selected locations for repeated activities connected to hunting, tool production, and gathering. These places provide clues that people remembered productive areas and returned to them when conditions were favourable. The landscape held memories. A valley was remembered because animals passed through it. A river was remembered because water remained available. A shelter was remembered because it offered protection. The world was stored inside human experience. You look beyond the fire toward the night sky. The stars appear above the ancient valley. The people around you do not know what the future will bring. They do not know that their descendants will create cities, write books, and explore distant worlds. But they are already carrying the qualities that will shape humanity: curiosity, patience, cooperation, adaptability, the ability to learn. Tonight, as you rest beside the fire, you think about the hunters who walked across this landscape long before history was recorded. They left behind no written stories, no personal names, no detailed memories of their individual lives. But their actions remain, in the tools they created, in the paths they followed, in the knowledge they passed from one generation to another. The night becomes quiet, the fire continues burning, the ancient world rests, and you continue your journey through the forgotten age when humans were still learning how to survive. One careful step at a time, the night beside the ancient fire slowly gives way to another morning, and you continue your journey through the world of 90,000 years ago. The hunting tools from yesterday rest beside the shelter, waiting for another day of use. Outside, the valley begins to awaken. The first sounds arrive gently, a bird calling from the trees, The movement of wind through grass, the distant footsteps of animals travelling across the land. You step outside and feel the cool morning air. The people around you are already awake, but today you notice something different. The focus is not only on finding food or preparing tools, it is on each other. The community gathers close together as the day begins. Children stay near adults. Older members of the group share knowledge. People prepare materials while speaking quietly. This is the human world behind the survival skills, the fire, the tools, the shelters. All of these are important, but the strongest foundation of early human life is cooperation. You sit beside the fire and watch the group interact. Someone helps another person repair damaged clothing made from animal skin. Another person shares gathered food. A child rests near an older family member while listening to stories. These small moments reveal something deeply human. Even in a difficult environment, people created connections. The archaeological record provides evidence that early humans lived in social groups where cooperation was essential. Surviving in unpredictable environments required sharing resources, protecting vulnerable members, and passing knowledge between generations. A single person could not easily survive alone. A community had a much better chance. You look around the shelter. The stone walls provide protection, but the people inside create the true sense of safety. The fire provides warmth, but the people who maintain it keep it alive. The tools provide ability, but the knowledge behind them comes from generations of shared learning. Human survival was always a group effort. You watch as an older member of the community works with a young child. The lesson is simple. The child learns how to recognize useful materials. The adult demonstrates slowly. The child watches carefully. Then the child tries. This process repeats again and again. Learning is not separated from daily life. It happens naturally. A child learns by participating, by observing, by making mistakes, by trying again. Today, children often learn through schools, books, and digital information. These systems are powerful, but ancient humans had another method. Their classroom was the landscape itself, and their teachers were the people around them. You follow the group as they move through the nearby area. The adults collect resources while younger members explore. The children are not simply passing time. They are developing important skills. They learn where water can be found. They learn how plants change with seasons. They learn how animals behave. They learn how to move safely through different environments. These lessons prepare them for the future. A small but fascinating clue from prehistoric sites is that some archaeological remains suggest children participated in activities connected to learning and tool production. Small footprints, miniature tools, and traces of repeated practice have helped researchers imagine how younger members of ancient communities developed their abilities. The evidence gives a glimpse of childhood before history began. You return to the shelter as the afternoon light spreads across the valley. The group begins preparing food. The work is shared. Someone organizes materials. Someone maintains the fire. Someone prepares gathered resources. No single task exists alone. Everything connects. You notice how much time people spend together. They travel together. They work together. They rest together. They survive together. This constant connection likely shaped human communication. Researchers studying human evolution continue examining how early communication developed and how much language ability existed among different ancient human populations. Some researchers believe complex communication was essential for cooperation and survival, while others suggest that early communication developed gradually alongside social needs and cultural traditions. The exact details remain difficult to reconstruct because spoken words disappear over time, but the evidence of cooperation remains. You listen to the voices around the fire. The language is unfamiliar. The sounds are from a world thousands of generations removed from your own, yet the purpose feels familiar. People are explaining, teaching, sharing, comforting. Human communication has always been about more than words. It is about connection, As evening approaches, the community settles into a peaceful routine. The fire burns brighter, shadows move across the stone walls. The smell of smoke mixes with the scent of the surrounding landscape. Outside, the temperature drops. Inside, the shelter feels warm. A child moves closer to the fire. An adult adjusts a covering made from animal skin. Someone tells a story from memory. Perhaps it is about a journey. Perhaps it is about animals. Perhaps it is about ancestors who lived before them. Stories helped communities remember important knowledge. They preserved experiences. They connected the present with the past. You realize that although these people lived without writing, they were not without history. Their history existed in different forms, in spoken memories, in traditions, in tools, in places they returned to, in lessons passed from one generation to another. The evening becomes quieter. You step outside and look toward the valley. The stars appear above the ancient landscape, the same sky that watched these humans live, learn and cooperate continues above the world today. You think about the distance between their lives and yours. Almost 90,000 years separate you from this moment. Yet many things remain recognizable. A family gathering around warmth, a parent teaching a child, a community sharing what it has, people searching for safety and belonging. These feelings have traveled across time. A remarkable discovery connected to prehistoric human remains is that some individuals survived serious injuries or physical challenges for many years, suggesting they may have received help from others. This offers one of the earliest glimpses of compassion and social care within human communities. The ancient world was not only about survival of the strongest, it was also about survival through kindness. The group rests together, the fire slowly burns, the valley becomes silent. You hear only the natural sounds of the night, the wind, the distant animals, the soft movement of people inside the shelter. You close your eyes for a moment and imagine how many nights like this existed before written history. Millions of quiet evenings, millions of fires, millions of conversations carried through the darkness. The story of humanity was created not only through great discoveries, but through countless small acts of cooperation. A hand helping another, a lesson being shared, a meal being offered, a fire being protected. And tonight, beside the ancient flames, you understand that the strength of early humans came not only from their tools or their intelligence, it came from each other. The morning light returns to the ancient valley, and you continue walking through the world of 90,000 years ago. The fire inside the shelter is slowly waking from its night of warmth, and the first people begin moving through the familiar routines that have shaped their lives for countless seasons. Today, your attention turns toward the youngest members of this ancient community, the children. You watch them step carefully across the rocky ground near the shelter. Their movements are curious and energetic, but they are always close to the adults around them. In this world, childhood is not separate from survival. Learning begins almost from the moment a child can walk. The landscape itself becomes a teacher. You follow a group of children as they explore the area around the shelter. They collect small stones, examine plants, and watch older members of the group working with tools. Every action is a lesson. A child picks up a piece of wood. An older person gently shows how it can be shaped. Another child watches someone preparing animal skins. A different child follows a family member searching for useful plants. These moments may seem ordinary, but they represent one of the most important processes in human history, passing knowledge forward. Around 90,000 years ago, human communities survived because each generation learned from those who came before. There were no written instructions, no formal schools, and no stored information systems. Knowledge travelled through observation, imitation, practice, and communication. The discoveries left behind by early human communities show that learning was deeply connected to daily activities. Children were not simply waiting to become adults, They were gradually becoming skilled members of their groups. You sit near the edge of the shelter and watch an elder work. The person carefully shapes a stone tool. A child watches closely. The elder does not hurry. Each movement is slow and deliberate. The child learns not only the action itself, but also the patience required to perform it. This is how survival skills are transferred, not through a single lesson, through thousands of small moments. You notice that children are also learning about the natural world. They learn which paths are safe. They learn how animals move. They learn where water can be found. They learn how weather changes. They learn the stories connected to places. A valley is not only a valley, it is a place where certain plants grow. A river is not only water, it is a route followed by animals and a source of life. A shelter is not only stone, it is a place remembered by generations. Among the traces preserved at prehistoric archaeological sites are clues that reveal younger individuals were present during many activities. Marks from small hands, footprints, and objects connected to learning have helped researchers understand that children were active participants in ancient communities. One surprising detail from this distant period is that some prehistoric tools may have been created through repeated practice by inexperienced makers. Archaeologists have found examples of less refined objects that may represent learning attempts, showing that even ancient humans had a process of teaching and improvement. Mistakes were part of learning, just as they are today. You watch a child attempt to shape a small piece of stone. The first attempt does not work perfectly. The child tries again. The older person provides guidance. Slowly, understanding develops. This simple scene connects across thousands of years. Human beings have always learned through curiosity as the day continues. The children move with their families through the landscape. Some gather near plants. Others observe animals from a distance. They are learning how the world works. Their education is practical because their lives depend on it. A child who understands the environment has a better chance of surviving. A child who remembers important lessons can help the next generation. The entire community benefits. You walk with them toward a nearby stream. The water moves quietly over stones. Children play near the edge while adults collect resources nearby. Even moments of play have meaning. Through play, children develop coordination, social skills, and an understanding of their environment. They practice movements they will later need as adults. A child throwing a small stick today may one day understand how to handle a hunting tool. A child following animal tracks may one day become a skilled tracker. A child listening to stories may one day become the person who teaches others. Human development happens slowly, one experience at a time. Scientists are still exploring how childhood changed throughout human evolution and how different prehistoric communities raise their young. Some researchers believe long childhood periods gave humans an advantage because they allowed more time for learning complex skills, while others examine how environmental pressures influence different patterns of development. The question remains part of ongoing research into what made humans unique. You return to the shelter as evening approaches. The children gather near the fire. Their energy slowly becomes calmer. The adults continue their work. Tools are repaired. Food is prepared. Materials are organized. The rhythm of the community continues. You notice how much the children are surrounded by knowledge. They do not need to search for a classroom. The classroom is everywhere. The fire teaches warmth and cooperation, and the forest teaches awareness. The animals teach patience. The elders teach memory. The entire world becomes a place of discovery. Today, many people think of childhood as a protected period separated from adult responsibilities. Ancient childhood was different, but it was not without care or affection. Children were valuable members of their communities, protected and guided by those around them. The evidence from prehistoric life suggests that human groups invested time and effort in raising their young because the survival of the next generation meant the survival of the entire community. You sit beside the fire and listen to the quiet sounds of the shelter. A child laughs softly. An adult speaks nearby. Wood cracks gently in the flames. Outside, the ancient landscape rests beneath the stars. You think about the children who lived here nearly 90,000 years ago. Their names are unknown. Their voices disappeared long ago. Their faces were never painted in books, but their experiences were part of the human story. Every child who learned beside an ancient fire helped carry humanity forward. Every lesson remembered. Every skill practiced. Every story shared. These small moments became the foundation of the future. As the fire continues glowing, you feel the peaceful connection between those ancient children and every generation that came afterward. The world has changed beyond imagination, but the simple act of learning remains the same. A child watching, a teacher guiding, a new generation preparing for tomorrow. And beneath the quiet stars of the ancient earth, that timeless process continues. The ancient morning returns, and you continue your journey across the landscapes that shaped human survival 90,000 years ago. The small community you have followed does not remain in one place forever. As seasons change and resources shift, people move across different environments, searching for the conditions that allow life to continue. You walk with them as they leave the familiar shelter behind. The valley slowly becomes smaller in the distance. The path leads toward a wider world. A world of forests, open grasslands, dry regions, rivers, and mountains. Early humans were not limited to a single environment. Their ability to adapt allowed them to live across many different parts of the planet. They learned to adjust their tools, behaviors, and strategies depending on the landscapes they encountered. You look around as the scenery changes. The cool valley becomes warmer. The vegetation becomes different. The ground beneath your feet changes from rocky soil to softer earth covered with plants. The group notices these changes. They understand that every environment has its own challenges. A forest provides shelter and materials, but movement can be difficult. An open grassland offers visibility and access to animals, but provides less protection from weather. A dry landscape may contain valuable resources, but finding water becomes essential. Human survival depends on flexibility. Research into human evolution has revealed that early Homo sapiens were capable of living in a remarkable range of environments. Their success was not because they were the strongest animals on Earth. It came from their ability to learn, cooperate, and adjust to new situations. You follow the group toward a river. Water has always been a central part of human movement. The river provides drinking water. It attracts animals. It supports plants. It creates a pathway through the landscape. The people stop and observe the area carefully before settling for a short rest. They are not only looking for immediate needs, they are thinking about the future. Will food be available here? Is the location safe? Can the group return during another season? Their decisions are connected to memory. You begin to understand that migration is not simply wandering. It is a conversation between humans and the environment. The land changes. Humans respond. Resources move. People adapt. The cycle continues. You imagine the vast distances travelled by ancient humans, without roads, without maps, without modern transportation. Every journey requires walking. Every new landscape requires learning. A mountain range must be crossed. A river must be followed. A new climate must be understood. The human body carries the traveller, but the human mind guides the path. A quiet discovery from prehistoric archaeology comes from evidence that early humans transported certain materials over surprisingly long distances. Some stones used for tools originated far from the places where they were found, suggesting that people either travelled widely or exchanged materials between groups. This reveals connections across ancient landscapes. The world of prehistoric humans was larger than many people imagine. You continue walking and enter a region with different conditions. The air feels warmer. The vegetation becomes more open. The group moves carefully through the area. They search for familiar signs, animal tracks, plant growth, water sources, safe resting places. Every environment creates a new puzzle. You notice how the people use experience to solve these challenges. A person who has lived near forests may understand different resources than someone who has travelled through dry grasslands. Knowledge from one place can be combined with lessons from another. This ability to share and preserve information becomes one of humanity's greatest strengths. Researchers are still exploring how early human populations exchanged knowledge across large distances and how much interaction occurred between different groups. Some scientists suggest that movement and contact helped spread technologies and cultural practices, while others believe many similarities developed independently because humans face similar problems in different regions. The evidence continues to reveal a complicated picture. You travel onward. The group reaches a place where several landscapes meet: a river valley, a wooded area, open land beyond. This location offers many opportunities. Animals move through the region. Plants grow in different seasons. Materials can be collected nearby. The community decides to rest here for a while. The evening begins. A fire is created. People gather. The scene feels familiar. Even though the surroundings have changed, the same human patterns appear again. Preparing food, repairing tools, sharing knowledge, caring for children. No matter where humans travelled, these activities remained important. You sit beside the fire and listen. The voices around you describe a world without borders. There are no countries, no official territories, only landscapes connected by rivers, mountains, and animal paths. People identify places through experience. A certain valley may be remembered because of abundant plants. A certain hill may be remembered because it provides shelter from wind. A certain river may be remembered because animals gather nearby. Places become part of human memory. Among the details hidden within archaeological discoveries is evidence that ancient humans sometimes carried personal objects or materials that may have had meaning beyond practical use. Items such as pigments, shells, or unusual stones found far from their natural sources suggest that human movement was connected not only to survival, but also to identity and expression. The exact meanings of these objects remain uncertain, but they offer a glimpse into the thoughts of people who lived long before written history. You look at the faces around the fire. These humans are travellers, explorers, learners. They are constantly adapting to a changing planet. The world around them is unpredictable. Climate shifts, animals move, resources appear and disappear, yet humans continue forward. Their greatest tool is not only stone or wood, it is the ability to understand change. Today, people can travel across continents in hours. Ancient humans travelled by foot, carrying only what they needed. Their journeys required patience and endurance, but they also created a deep connection with the world around them. You imagine their footsteps crossing valleys that would later become famous regions of human history. You imagine their descendants continuing these journeys, moving into new lands, discovering new environments, building new ways of life. The fire begins to dim. The night settles over the unfamiliar landscape. The group rests after another day of movement. Above them, the stars shine across the same sky that has watched humans travel for thousands of generations. You close your eyes and listen. The wind, the fire, the distant sounds of the wilderness. Humanity's story is not only the story of where people settled, it's also the story of where they get to, the paths they followed, the environments they learned, the challenges they overcome. And tonight, you continue walking with those ancient travellers, following the footsteps that carried humanity toward the future. The night slowly disappears, and a soft morning light spreads across the ancient landscape. You continue your journey through a world shaped by cold winds, changing climates, and the footsteps of different human relatives who lived during the long ice age. Today, your path leads you toward another group of humans, not Homo sapiens. But Neanderthals, you travel northward in your imagination, toward the colder regions of Ice Age Europe, where Neanderthals survived through some of the harshest environments on Earth. The landscape here feels different from the warmer regions you have visited before. The air is colder, the wind moves across open plains, snow rests on distant mountains. Large areas of grassland stretch toward the horizon, interrupted by forests and rocky valleys. You feel the temperature change around you. This is a world where survival requires careful preparation. Neanderthals lived during periods of dramatic climate change. Their history stretches across hundreds of thousands of years, and they adapted to environments that could shift from relatively mild conditions to extremely cold periods. The people you encounter are not primitive creatures struggling without knowledge. They are skilled humans. They understand their surroundings. They create tools. They hunt. They care for their communities. They adapt. You walk beside a Neanderthal group moving through a cold valley. Their bodies are well suited for Ice Age conditions. They have strong builds that help conserve energy in colder climates. Their clothing consists of animal skins and practical coverings that protect them from freezing temperatures. The wind touches your face. You pull your imaginary covering closer. You realize how challenging this environment would feel without modern technology. Today, people can enter warm buildings, wear manufactured clothing, and use transportation to escape harsh weather. These ancient humans had none of those advantages. Their survival depended on preparation, cooperation, and understanding nature. You watch as the group approaches a rocky shelter. The location provides protection from the wind. Inside, signs of activity are visible. A fire has burned here. Stone tools rest nearby. Animal remains show that food was prepared in this area. Evidence uncovered from Neanderthal sites reveals that these communities used sophisticated tools, controlled fire, and adapted their lifestyles to difficult environments. Their survival demonstrates remarkable flexibility and intelligence. You sit near the fire and observe their daily activities. A person carefully shapes a stone tool. Another prepares materials. Someone maintains the flames. Children stay close to adults. The scene feels familiar. Although Neanderthals and Homo sapiens followed different evolutionary paths, many aspects of daily life shared similarities. They both needed warmth. They both needed food. They both depended on cooperation. They both passed knowledge between generations. You watch a group member preparing a hunting tool. The process requires concentration. A stone is selected, a sharp edge is created. The tool is adjusted for a specific purpose. The knowledge behind these actions represents generations of experience. Neanderthals were highly skilled hunters. They lived among large Ice Age animals, including deer, wild horses, and other creatures adapted to cold environments. You imagine them moving across frozen landscapes, tracking animals through snow, following footprints, reading changes in the environment. Their survival depended on understanding the behavior of animals around them. A fascinating detail from Neanderthal archaeology is that some discoveries suggest they used natural pigments and may have created personal decorations or symbolic objects. These findings have encouraged researchers to reconsider older assumptions about Neanderthal behavior for many years. For many, Neanderthals were incorrectly portrayed as simple and less capable compared with modern humans. Modern evidence paints a much more complex picture. They were skilled, they were adaptable, they were capable of caring for others. You walk deeper into the shelter. An older individual rests nearby. Archaeological remains have shown examples of Neanderthal individuals who survived serious injuries or physical difficulties, suggesting that members of their communities may have provided care and support. This offers a quiet glimpse into compassion during the distant past. Survival was not only about individual ability, it was about relationships. The group depended on one another. Researchers are still investigating many questions about Neanderthal society. Scientists continue examining how they communicated, how complex their social relationships were, and how much symbolic meaning existed within their cultures. Different interpretations have developed because ancient evidence can only reveal certain parts of their lives. The mystery makes their story even more fascinating. You follow the Neanderthals as they move across the landscape. The environment changes around them. Some seasons bring more vegetation, others bring severe cold. Animals migrate, resources shift, the group adapts. They may change hunting locations, they may adjust their movements, they may return to places remembered from previous journeys. Like the Homo sapiens communities you visited earlier, Neanderthals were deeply connected to their environment. They were not simply surviving against nature, they were learning how to live within it. As evening approaches, the group returns to the shelter. The fire becomes the center of activity. Warm light fills the rocky space. The smell of burning wood mixes with the cold air entering from outside. People gather close. The sounds are quiet. A tool being repaired. A voice speaking softly, the movement of flames. You look around and realize how human this moment feels. Different faces, different time, different world. Yet the same basic needs remain. Warmth, security, connection. You think about how many generations of Neanderthals lived through landscapes like this. They witnessed changing climates. They followed animals across vast territories. They raised children beneath cold skies. They created memories in places that would eventually disappear. Their story became part of the larger human journey. Although Neanderthals are no longer present as a separate population, their legacy remains connected to humanity. Genetic research has shown that many modern human populations outside Africa carry small amounts of Neanderthal ancestry, revealing that the histories of different human groups were connected. The ancient world was not made of separate stories. It was a web of journeys, different human populations, different environments, different adaptations, all connected through time. The fire begins to glow more softly. Outside, snow begins falling lightly across the valley. The wind moves over the ancient landscape. The Neanderthal community rests inside the shelter, protected from the cold night. You sit quietly beside them. You listen. You watch. And you understand that human history is much larger than one single path. It is a story of many peoples, many environments, many ways of surviving. Tonight, beneath the ancient stars and beside the warm fire, you continue your journey through the forgotten world where different humans walked across the earth. The quiet morning arrives over the ancient landscape, and you continue walking through the deep history of humanity. The cold valley where you spent the night with the Neanderthal community slowly fades behind you. The wind moves gently across the open land, carrying the sounds of distant animals and the movement of ancient forests. Your journey now returns to the wider human story, the story of movement, the story of following life across changing landscapes. Around 90,000 years ago, humans across different regions depended heavily on seasonal patterns. Animals moved according to weather, food availability, and breeding cycles. Plants appeared and disappeared with the changing seasons. Rivers changed, temperatures shifted, and landscapes transformed over thousands of years. To survive, humans had to move with the world around them. You walk across a wide grassland where herds travel in the distance. The morning sun touches the open plain. The air carries the smell of dry grass and earth. You hear distant calls from animals moving across the valley. This landscape is not empty. It is filled with movement. Large herbivores travel along ancient routes that existed long before humans arrived. Reindeer move through colder regions. Wild horses cross open plains. Deer search for vegetation among forests. Forests and grasslands in some areas. Enormous animals such as mammoths shape the environment around them. These animals are not only sources of food, they are part of the entire ecosystem. Humans observe them carefully. They learn their habits, They understand their movements. They recognize the connection between animals, weather, and seasons. You follow a small group as they travel along a familiar route. They are not chasing animals randomly. They are following knowledge. A person remembers that certain animals passed through this valley during previous seasons. Another remembers where water can be found after dry periods. Someone else recognizes signs that suggest animals are nearby. The landscape is filled with memories. The remains preserved from this era reveal that hunter-gatherer communities developed sophisticated strategies for using seasonal resources. Humans did not simply react to nature. They planned around predictable patterns and adjusted their movements when conditions changed. You watch the group stop near a river. The water moves slowly. The riverbank shows signs of life. Animal tracks cover the soft ground. Plants grow near the water. The location provides everything the group needs for a temporary stay. People collect materials. Children explore nearby. Adults observe the surroundings. The community understands that a good location can make survival easier. A small clue hidden in the archaeological record comes from repeated occupation sites, where layers of human activity show that people return to certain places again and again. These locations were often chosen because they provided valuable combinations of shelter, water, food, and useful materials. The ancient world was not a random journey from one place to another. It was a journey guided by knowledge. You continue following the group as they move across different landscapes. The environment changes gradually. The open grassland becomes a mixture of forest and valley. The temperature becomes cooler. The ground becomes softer. Different resources appear. The people adjust. They change how they travel. They change what they collect. They change how they use their tools. This ability to adapt allowed humans to spread across many environments. You think about the challenge of such journeys. There are no vehicles, no roads, no signs showing the correct direction. Every path must be discovered. Every destination must be understood. A journey that takes only a few hours today may have required many days or weeks in the ancient world. Yet humans continued moving. Curiosity and necessity pushed them forward. You see a group member examining the horizon. They are looking for signs, a familiar mountain shape, a river bend, a place where animals gather, a landscape remembered from childhood. Memory becomes a form of navigation. Today, people rely on maps stored inside phones and computers. Ancient travelers carried maps inside their minds. Their knowledge was built from experience and passed through generations. Scientists have offered several possible explanations for how ancient humans shared information across large distances. Some researchers emphasize direct contact between groups, while others suggest that knowledge spread slowly through migration and repeated encounters. The exact process remains a subject of continuing study. As the day continues, the group reaches an area where large animals have passed recently. You notice how everyone becomes more attentive. The pace changes. People observe quietly. They examine the ground. They look toward the distant landscape. The animals are part of a seasonal rhythm that humans have learned to follow, but the relationship is not simple. Following animals requires patience. It requires understanding. It requires respect for the environment. A detail that often receives less attention is that prehistoric communities did not always travel in the same patterns throughout the year. Their movements could change depending on local conditions, available resources, and unexpected environmental events. Human flexibility was one of the reasons they survived through changing climates. You return with the group toward a temporary resting place. The afternoon light begins to soften. The fire is prepared. People gather materials. The familiar sounds return. Stone being placed carefully, wood breaking, voices around warmth. The same human routines appear again, even in a different landscape. You sit near the fire and think about the journeys that shaped humanity. Every valley crossed, every river followed, every animal migration observed, every seasonal change remembered. All of these experiences became part of human knowledge. The people around you do not know they are participating in a story that will continue for tens of thousands of years. They do not know future generations will study their tools and traces. They do not know scientists will examine their movements to understand human evolution. They only know the world in front of them, and they understand it deeply. The night grows quiet. The stars appear above the ancient landscape. The animals continue moving through the darkness. The fire provides warmth. The group rests. You listen to the sounds of this forgotten world, the wind, the flames, the distant calls of creatures that shared the earth with humans long ago. You realize that migration was not only about survival, it was also about discovery. Humans became travelers because the world invited them forward. Each new landscape offered challenges. Each challenge created knowledge. Each piece of knowledge helped the next generation continue. And beneath the endless sky, you keep walking beside these ancient travelers, following the paths that carried humanity through time. The morning light gently reaches the ancient landscape, and you continue your journey through a world that existed long before cities, written languages, and recorded history. The footsteps of early humans have brought you through valleys, forests, and frozen regions. You have seen their tools, their shelters, their families, and their journeys. Now you begin to notice something deeper. Humans were not only surviving, they were beginning to express themselves. You walk toward a quiet area near an ancient shelter. The landscape is peaceful. A river moves slowly nearby. The wind passes through tall grass. The stone walls of the shelter stand silently against the changing weather. Inside this place, you discover signs that reveal another side of prehistoric life, a side connected to creativity, identity, and meaning. For many years, people imagined prehistoric humans only as hunters struggling against nature. But discoveries from ancient sites have shown a more complex picture. Early humans were not simply focused on finding food and avoiding danger. They also created objects, used colours, and developed behaviours that suggest they were thinking about themselves and their place in the world. You step closer to the shelter wall. You notice traces of human activity, small objects, carefully shaped materials, minerals collected from distant areas. These items tell stories, not stories written with words, stories written through actions. The material record from this period tells us that early humans were capable of behaviours beyond immediate survival. Archaeological discoveries have revealed evidence of personal decoration, pigment use, and carefully crafted objects dating back tens of thousands of years. You watch as someone in the community prepares a small amount of natural pigment. The material comes from the earth. Minerals are collected. They are processed carefully. The colour is preserved. The person examines the pigment in their hand. A simple colour from the ground has become something meaningful. The exact purpose of these materials remains uncertain. Perhaps they were used for personal decoration. Perhaps they mark group identity. Perhaps they were connected to important social moments. The meaning may have changed between different communities. Scientists have proposed several possible interpretations of these discoveries. Some researchers believe early symbolic behaviours helped strengthen social connections, while others suggest that some objects may have had practical purposes that are difficult to recognise today. The mystery remains part of what makes prehistoric archaeology so fascinating. You continue exploring the shelter. A person creates a small object from bone or stone. The work is careful, the shape is intentional, the surface is adjusted slowly. This is not simply about making something useful, it is also about creating something that reflects human thought. A detail that often receives less attention is that some prehistoric objects show evidence of repeated modification, meaning people sometimes spent extra effort improving or decorating items beyond their basic function. These small choices provide glimpses into how ancient humans viewed the objects around them. You begin to understand that creativity did not suddenly appear with the first civilizations. It existed much earlier. It was already present in small communities gathered around ancient fires. You look toward the people inside the shelter. An elder speaks quietly. Children listen. Someone shares a memory of a distant place. Someone explains a tradition. These moments are difficult to see directly through archaeology, but they are suggested by the importance of communication and shared knowledge in human communities. Culture begins with connection. It grows through repeated actions. It survives through memory. You think about how different this world is from today. Modern societies preserve ideas through books, recordings, and digital systems. Ancient communities preserved ideas through people. A story could live inside someone's memory. A tradition could be carried through generations. A symbol could represent something meaningful even without written explanation. The human abilities to create meaning became one of the most powerful forces in our history. You follow the group as they travel through the landscape. They carry practical tools, but they may also carry objects connected to identity and memory. A special stone, a coloured mineral, a carefully shaped item. These objects travel with them. They become part of their personal world. The question of how symbolic thinking developed among early humans continues to attract attention from specialists. Some scientists suggest that symbolic behaviour emerged gradually as communication and social complexity increased. Others propose that humans may have possessed these abilities much earlier than previously believed. The evidence continues to change how we understand the past. You return to the fire as evening approaches. The flames create warm light against the stone walls. The community gathers together. The atmosphere feels peaceful. Someone repairs a tool. Someone prepares food. Someone speaks softly. A child holds a small object and examines it carefully. Perhaps that child will create something new one day. Perhaps that child will teach another generation. The human story continues through small moments like this. You step outside and look across the ancient landscape and the stars appear above the valley. There are no buildings, no roads, no artificial lights, only the natural world and the people living within it. You realize that these humans were not simply waiting for civilization to begin. They were already creating the foundations of human culture. They were forming connections. They were expressing ideas. They were giving meaning to their experiences. The beginnings of art, tradition, and identity did not appear suddenly. They grew slowly, like a fire carefully protected through the night. A single spark became a flame. A single memory became a tradition. A simple object became a symbol. And over thousands of generations, these small expressions helped shape the human world. The fire begins to burn lower. The people prepare to rest. The shelter becomes quiet. Outside, the wind moves gently across the ancient valley. You listen to the sounds of a world before written history. The distant animals, the soft crackling of flames, the quiet voices of people sharing another evening together. Their names are forgotten. Their individual stories are unknown. But their creativity remains. Their curiosity remains. Their desire to connect remains. And tonight, as you continue walking through this ancient world, you understand that humanity's story was never only about survival. It was also about imagination. It was about finding meaning in a vast and changing world. It was about being human. The ancient night slowly fades, and you continue your journey through the changing world of 90,000 years ago. The quiet shelter, where humans gathered around the fire, remains behind you. But the landscape ahead reminds you of one constant truth about prehistoric life. The earth was always changing. The people you have followed survived not because the world remained stable, but because they learned how to adapt when everything around them shifted. You step into a colder morning. The wind feels stronger. The sky is covered with soft grey clouds. The landscape stretches wide beneath the changing weather. A valley that once provided abundant plants may become less productive. A river that once flowed strongly may shrink. Animals may change their routes. Humans must respond. The climate of the Ice Age was not a simple story of endless cold. It was a period of repeated changes, with warmer and colder phases affecting different regions. These shifts influenced where plants grew, where animals travelled, and where humans could successfully live. You look across the land and imagine how difficult it must have been to survive in such an unpredictable world. Today, people can check weather forecasts, store large amounts of food, and control the temperature inside their homes. Ancient humans had no such protections. They depended on knowledge built through experience and shared across generations. Every season mattered. Every decision mattered. You follow a group moving through a landscape that has become more challenging. The grass is thinner here. The trees are fewer. The air feels drier. The people notice these changes. They do not ignore them. They adjust their plans. Some search for new water sources. Others look for signs of animals. The community changes its movements according to the conditions around them. You see a person examining the ground near a riverbank. The water level is lower than before. The person remembers this place. Perhaps they visited during another season. Perhaps older members of the group explained how this landscape changes over time. Memory becomes a survival tool. Ancient humans carried knowledge of past experiences with them. They remembered difficult winters. They remembered productive valleys. They remembered safe shelters. The past helped them prepare for the future. Research into prehistoric populations has shown that human groups were capable of adjusting their technologies and behaviors when environments changed. The ability to modify strategies was one reason humans survived through thousands of years of climate variation. You continue walking with the group as they search for resources. The landscape feels quiet, but the people are constantly observing. A person notices new plant growth. Another watches animal tracks. Someone studies the clouds. These small observations guide important decisions. You begin to understand that survival was not based on one great invention. It was built from countless small adaptations: a better tool, a safer shelter, a remembered location, a new way of gathering food, a different path through the landscape. Each improvement added another layer of knowledge. You arrive at a temporary campsite near a rocky hillside. The location provides some protection from the wind. The group begins preparing the area. Branches are collected, the fire is built, materials are organized. The work feels familiar, even during difficult periods. Humans created moments of comfort. A small flame in a cold environment, a shared meal, a protected place to rest. These simple things created stability in an uncertain world. A quiet reminder from the past comes from archaeological sites where layers of occupation show repeated human use during changing environmental conditions. These places reveal that people return to familiar locations when possible, adapting their activities according to the resources available. The landscape changed, but humans continued finding ways to belong within it. You sit beside the fire as evening approaches. The temperature drops quickly, the warmth becomes more valuable, someone adds more wood. The flames rise, the smell of smoke spreads through the shelter. The community gathers closer. This moment feels similar to earlier nights, but you sense the challenges surrounding them. The future is uncertain. The next season may be easier, it may be harder, yet the people continue. Scientists are still exploring how different prehistoric communities responded to major climate changes and whether certain migrations were caused mainly by environmental pressure or by other social factors. The available evidence allows several explanations, and the relationship between climate and human movement remains an important area of research. You look around the shelter. The people here are not helpless victims of nature. They are active participants in their own survival. They make choices, they solve problems, they learn, they adapt. A child sits beside an older family member. The child listens as the adult explains something about the changing landscape. Perhaps the lesson is about finding water. Perhaps it is about recognizing weather patterns. Perhaps it is about remembering a place where resources can be found. This knowledge may become important many years later. Human survival depends on these connections. You step outside after sunset. The stars appear above the ancient earth. The wind moves across the valley. The darkness feels enormous, but the fire behind you creates a small circle of warmth. You think about the challenges these people faced. Cold seasons, changing landscapes, limited resources, long journeys, but you also think about their strengths, their intelligence, their cooperation, their ability to learn from mistakes, their willingness to explore new possibilities. The story of prehistoric humanity is not only a story of hardship, it is a story of adjustment, a story of patience, a story of people finding solutions in a world that never stopped changing. The fire continues burning. The community rests. Outside, the ancient landscape sleeps beneath the stars, somewhere beyond the shelter. Animals move through the darkness, somewhere far away. Other human groups are also adapting to their own environments. Across forests, valleys, grasslands, and frozen regions, humanity continues its long journey. You close your eyes and listen. The sound of flames, the sound of wind, the quiet rhythm of ancient life. Thousands of generations later, the lessons from this world remain. Change is unavoidable. Survival depends on adaptation. And the human story continues because people have always found ways to move forward. The morning arrives softly over the ancient landscape, and you continue walking through the world of 90,000 years ago. The changing climate has shaped the land around you, but one thing has remained constant throughout your journey. Humans survive together. You leave the temporary shelter behind and follow the small community as they move through the valley. The people carry their tools, materials, and memories of places they have visited before. Their strength does not come from a single person. It comes from everyone. The wind moves across the open land. The grass bends gently beneath the morning air. Birds travel above the valley. The sounds of the natural world surround you. The group moves calmly, but every person is aware of their surroundings. A person watches the path ahead. Another checks the condition of the tools. Someone stays close to children. Another remembers the location of resources. Each individual contributes something important. You begin to understand that cooperation was not simply helpful, it was essential. A human living alone in this ancient world would face enormous challenges. Finding food, protecting against cold temperatures, creating tools, and caring for injuries would be extremely difficult without support. Together, people created possibilities that no individual could easily achieve. Studies of human evolution have shown that cooperation played a central role in the success of our species. Sharing information, caring for group members, and working toward common goals allowed early humans to survive in environments that challenged even the most adaptable animals. You watch as the group approaches a difficult area of terrain. A narrow path crosses between rocks. The ground is uneven. The people slow their movements. An older member of the group walks carefully. A younger person offers support. The moment is simple, but it reveals something important. Human communities were not built only around strength. They were built around relationships. A person's value came from knowledge, experience, and connection. You continue walking. The group reaches an area where materials can be collected. Several people begin searching for useful resources. Someone finds suitable stone, another gathers wood, a third person checks plants growing nearby. The work happens naturally. There's no need for complicated instructions. Everyone understands their role. This shared knowledge allows the community to function. A small discovery that reveals a larger story comes from ancient human remains showing that some individuals survived injuries that would have made independent survival extremely difficult. These findings suggest that others likely helped them with food, protection, or daily activities. Care was part of human life long before written records existed. You sit beside the group during a short rest. A child asks questions through gestures and sounds. An adult responds patiently. The exchange may seem small, but moments like this shape the development of human communication. People needed ways to share information, where to find food, how to create tools, when to move, how to stay safe. Communication was not only about speaking, it was about understanding one another. Researchers are still working to understand how early forms of human communication developed and how they influence cooperation. Some scientists believe complex social relationships encouraged more advanced communication, while others suggest that communication skills and cooperation evolved together over a very long period. The exact process remains one of the fascinating questions in human history. You continue following the group toward a sheltered area. The people begin preparing for the evening. The familiar routines return, firewood is collected, the shelter is organized, food is prepared, tools are checked. The community works together without needing to separate survival from daily life. Everything is connected. You watch an older person showing a younger member how to repair a damaged tool. The lesson is slow, careful, patient. The younger person learns through observation. This is how knowledge travels. A single person's experience becomes the knowledge of the whole group. A technique discovered many years earlier can continue helping people long after its creator is gone. This process is one of humanity's greatest advantages. Many animals survive through instinct. Humans survive through shared learning. You look around the shelter as evening arrives. The fire creates warm light against the stone walls. People gather close. The atmosphere is peaceful. Someone shares food. Someone tells a story. Someone laughs softly. The scene feels surprisingly familiar. Thousands of generations separate you from this moment. But the emotions are recognizable. The comfort of being surrounded by others. The feeling of belonging. The safety created by community. These experiences have remained part of human life across time. An intriguing piece of the past can be seen in the way prehistoric communities use shared spaces. Archaeological sites often show areas where different activities happened close together, suggesting that people gathered around common locations for work, food preparation, and social interaction. The shelter was not only a place to sleep, it was a place where human connections grew. You step outside and look across the valley. The landscape is enormous. Mountains stretch into the distance. The sky is filled with stars. The world around you seems almost endless. Yet within this vast environment, small human groups created communities strong enough to continue. That is the remarkable part. They were few, they had limited technology, they faced difficult conditions, but they had something powerful, each other. You think about the long journey humanity has taken, the tools changed, the shelters changed, the environments changed, but cooperation remained. It helped people survive cold periods. It helped them cross unfamiliar landscapes. It helped them raise children and preserve knowledge. It helped them become the species that would eventually transform the planet. The fire begins to burn lower. The voices around you become quieter. The community prepares to rest. Outside, the ancient world continues moving. Animals travel through the darkness. The wind passes over the valley. The stars remain above the same earth that humans have watched for countless generations. You sit beside the fading fire and reflect on what you have witnessed. Human history is often told through discoveries, inventions, and civilizations. But before all of those things existed, there was something more basic. People helping people, a hand reaching out, a lesson being shared, a meal being offered, a fire being protected. These simple actions created the foundation for everything that came later. And tonight, beneath the ancient sky, you understand that humanity's greatest achievement may not have been a tool or a building. It was the ability to stand together. The ancient morning arrives quietly, and you continue your journey through the final stages of this long walk across the world of 90,000 years ago. The landscapes you have crossed remain in your memory. The valleys, the forests, the cold regions, the open grasslands, the shelters where fires burned, the places where humans learned how to survive. Now, as you continue forward, you begin to see the larger meaning of everything you have witnessed. You are standing in the world before civilization, before cities, before written records, before monuments that would later tell the stories of kings and empires. But this does not mean humanity had no history. The history was already happening. It was written in different ways, through footprints in ancient soil, through stone tools left behind, through traces of fire, through memories passed between generations. You walk across a wide landscape where early humans once travelled. The morning air is calm, the sun rises slowly above the horizon, a river flows through the valley, reflecting the light. The world feels peaceful. Yet beneath this peaceful surface lies a story of thousands of years of adaptation. The people who lived here were building the foundations of the future without knowing it. You watch a small group preparing for another journey. They check their tools, they gather materials, they organize what they can carry. Their movements are familiar now. You've seen these actions many times, but today you see them differently. Every action represents knowledge. A person selecting the right stone, a person remembering a safe path, a person teaching a child, a person caring for another member of the group. All of these moments contributed to the human story. Current understanding of prehistoric life suggests that human development was not created by one single breakthrough. Instead, countless small improvements accumulated over many generations. Each generation inherited knowledge from the previous one and added something new. Human progress was a long journey, not a sudden change. You continue following the group as they move across the landscape. They travel toward a familiar location. Perhaps a valley where resources are available. Perhaps a shelter used during certain seasons. The exact details of their journeys are impossible to know. But the archaeological record shows that early humans were capable of planning, remembering, and adapting across changing environments. You notice how closely connected they are to the land. They understand where animals move. They recognize useful plants. They know where water can be found. The environment is not just a place they live. It is a source of knowledge. A small clue hidden in ancient remains comes from the repeated discovery of tools, fireplaces, and activity areas in certain locations. These patterns suggest that some places became important points in human movement, creating connections between people and landscapes long before permanent settlements existed. You imagine the generations that passed through these areas. A child who learned beside a river, a family who rested beneath a rocky shelter, a group who protected a fire during a cold night. Their individual names disappeared, but their experiences remained. You stop beside a quiet hillside. Below you, the landscape stretches into the distance. You think about everything early humans had learned. They learned to create tools. They learned to control fire. They learned to cooperate. They learned to communicate. They learned to survive in changing environments. But perhaps the most important lesson was learning how to adapt. The world never stayed the same. Climate changed. Animals moved. Resources shifted. Humans responded. This ability became one of the defining characteristics of our species. Scientists are still examining how different abilities developed together during human evolution. Some researchers emphasize the importance of technology and problem solving, while others focus on social cooperation and communication as the key factors that allowed humans to expand into new environments. The evidence suggests that many abilities work together: intelligence, creativity, social connection, observation, memory. Together, these qualities shaped humanity. You return to the shelter as evening approaches. The fire is prepared one more time. The scene feels familiar. The same warmth, the same quiet conversations, the same feeling of community. But now you understand the deeper importance of these moments. This was the beginning of everything, not the beginning of life itself. Life had existed for billions of years, but this was the beginning of a human path that would eventually lead to villages, cities, science, and technology. You sit beside the fire, a child listens to an older person, a toolmaker works carefully, a family shares food, The scene is simple, yet it contains the roots of human civilization. A remarkable observation from ancient archaeology is that many important human developments began in ordinary moments rather than dramatic events. A better tool, a new technique, or a shared idea could slowly spread through communities and change the future. The world was transformed one small step at a time. You look outside, the stars appear above the ancient landscape. The same stars watched these humans live thousands of generations ago. They watched people travel across continents. They watched families grow. They watched knowledge pass from one generation to another. And now, they shine above you as you remember this journey. You realize that history did not begin when humans started writing. History began when humans started leaving traces of their experiences. A stone shaped by a careful hand. A fire maintained through the night. A shelter remembered across seasons. A lesson shared with a child. These were the earliest chapters, the first pages of a story that continues today. The people around the fire do not know what will happen in the future. They do not know their descendants will create enormous cities. They do not know humans will cross oceans and explore space. They only know the world around them, and they are doing everything possible to understand it. The night becomes peaceful. The fire glows softly. The ancient landscape rests. You listen to the quiet sounds of a world before history began. The wind moving through grass, the distant sounds of animals, the gentle crackle of flames. You think about how far humanity has travelled, from small groups beside ancient fires, to a global civilization connected across the planet. Yet the foundation remains the same: curiosity, learning, cooperation, adaptation. The qualities that helped humans survive 90,000 years ago still shape the world today. As you close your eyes beside the ancient fire, you feel connected to all those generations that came before. Their world has disappeared, but their journey continues through you. The final evening of your journey through the world of 90,000 years ago arrives quietly. You stand once again beside an ancient fire, surrounded by the sounds of a landscape that existed long before written history. The flames move gently. The smoke rises into the dark sky. The wind travels across the valley. Somewhere in the distance, animals continue their ancient journeys. You look around at the people gathered near the fire. They are not famous figures. They are not rulers. Their names have been forgotten. But their lives mattered. Their choices mattered. Every step they took helped shape the long path of humanity. You have followed them through cold valleys, open grasslands, forests, and rocky shelters. You have watched them create tools, gather food, teach children, care for one another, and adapt to a changing world. Now, you begin to understand the quiet legacy they left behind. They lived before history was recorded, but they were part of history. The evidence preserved from this distant period allows us to see that early humans were already capable of complex survival strategies, social cooperation, and environmental adaptation. Their world may appear distant, but the foundations of human behavior were already developing. You sit closer to the fire. The warmth reaches your hands. The stone beneath you feels cool. The familiar smell of smoke fills the air. You think about how different life was in this ancient age. There were no cities glowing beneath the night sky, no roads connecting distant places, no machines carrying people across continents. Yet humans were already travellers. They were already learners. They were already explorers. You watch as the community prepares for rest. A person places another piece of wood onto the fire. A child settles near family members. Someone checks a tool before sleeping. These small actions seem ordinary, but they represent thousands of years of human experience. A fire protected through the night. A tool repaired before tomorrow. A lesson remembered. A family cared for. Humanity was built through moments like these. You look toward the darkness beyond the shelter. The landscape stretches endlessly. The mountains stand quietly, the rivers continue flowing, the forests move gently with the wind. This world was challenging, but it was also full of beauty. The ancient earth was not only a place of survival, it was a place of discovery, a place where humans learned to understand their surroundings, a place where curiosity became a survival skill. You think about the first people you followed through this journey, the hunters who studied animal tracks, the toolmakers who shaped stone, the children who learned beside the fire, the families who shared food and protection, the travellers who crossed unfamiliar lands, the communities that survived difficult climates. All of them were connected. All of them were part of the same human story. An intriguing piece of the past is that many prehistoric discoveries do not reveal individual stories directly. Instead, archaeologists often reconstruct human experiences through thousands of small clues. A fragment of stone, a piece of charcoal, or a trace of activity can become part of a much larger picture. The past speaks quietly. It does not tell stories with voices. It tells stories through evidence. You imagine the countless people who lived before recorded history. Generations were born, generations learned, generations passed away. But knowledge continued. The location of a useful valley, the method of creating a tool, the memory of changing seasons, the understanding of animals, the importance of cooperation. Each generation added something to the next. Scientists continue exploring many questions about the lives of prehistoric humans. The exact details of their thoughts, traditions, and personal experiences can never be fully recovered. However, every discovery brings us closer to understanding how these ancient communities lived and how they influenced the future of humanity. You watch the fire slowly become smaller. The flames no longer rise as high. The night becomes deeper. The stars above the valley shine brightly. These are the same stars that ancient humans looked upon. They saw the same sky. They felt the same wonder. They experienced the same quiet moments at the end of a long day. In this way, the distance between past and present feels smaller. You are separated by thousands of generations, but you share something important. The simple experience of being human, the need for warmth, the need for connection, the desire to understand the world, the hope that the next day will bring another opportunity. You close your eyes for a moment. You hear the ancient night, the soft movement of wind, the distant sounds of animals, the gentle crackling of the fire, the quiet breathing of people resting nearby. This is the world before history began, a world that existed before names were written down, before monuments were built, before civilizations recorded their achievements. But it was not an empty world. It was filled with human experiences, with learning, with discovery, with care, with resilience. You slowly step away from the ancient shelter. The journey through this forgotten era is coming to an end, but the story continues. The people you followed will become ancestors of future generations. Their descendants will continue moving, creating, learning, and adapting. And the small fires of the prehistoric world will eventually become the lights of villages and cities. The simple tools shaped from stone will become the foundation for future technologies. The lessons learned from nature will become the beginning of science and exploration. Everything begins somewhere. And much of humanity's story began here, with small groups of people beneath wide skies, with hand-shaping tools, with voices sharing knowledge, with communities protecting one another. You look back one final time. The ancient fire glows softly in the darkness. The shelter stands quietly. The valley rests beneath the stars. The memory of this world begins to fade. But its importance remains. Human history is not only the story of great achievements, it is also the story of ordinary people who lived, learned, and cared for each other. People whose names disappeared. People whose voices vanished. But people who carried humanity forward. Tonight, you leave the world of 90,000 years ago with a deeper understanding. The human journey was never created in a single moment. It was built slowly, one step, one discovery, one generation at a time, and beneath the endless sky of the ancient earth. The quiet story of humanity continues. The journey now becomes quieter. The ancient landscape slowly fades into the peaceful darkness of night. You no longer walk through valleys searching for the traces of forgotten people. You simply rest beneath the same sky that watched humanity take its earlier steps. The fire beside you burns gently. The flames are smaller now. They move slowly, creating soft patterns of light against the stone shelter walls. The warmth spreads calmly through the quiet space, while outside, the cold air moves across the ancient land. You hear the distant sounds of the wilderness, a faint call from an animal somewhere beyond the valley, the gentle movement of wind through grass, the quiet rustling of leaves in the ancient forest. The world around you slowly settles. The people who lived here thousands of generations ago have finished another day. They have gathered food, repaired tools, cared for their families, and shared their knowledge. Tomorrow, they will continue their journey, but tonight, they rest, and you rest with them. You think about the long road humanity has travelled, from simple shelters beneath rocky cliffs, from fires protected through cold nights, from hands shaping the first tools, from children learning beside their elders. These small moments became the foundation of everything that followed. The civilizations that would rise later, the cities that would cover the earth, the discoveries that would change the future. All of them began with these quiet human experiences, the desire to survive, the desire to learn, the desire to connect. Above you, the stars shine across the ancient sky. They are the same stars that early humans looked upon while sitting beside their fires. They saw those lights without knowing the science behind them, but they still felt the wonder of the universe for a moment. Time feels very close. The past and present seem connected. The people of 90,000 years ago are no longer distant figures from an unreachable world. They are part of the same human story, a story that continues through every person who looks upward and wonders about the world around them. The fire slowly becomes quieter. The final pieces of wood glow softly. The warmth remains. The shelter becomes still. The ancient valley rests beneath the peaceful night. You allow the memories of this journey to slowly disappear into the darkness. The footsteps across the grasslands. The sound of stone tools being shaped. The voices around the fire. The changing seasons. The endless landscapes. All of them become part of a quiet dream. Tonight, you have travelled back before history began. You have walked beside people who lived simply, but not without meaning. You have seen that humanity was built not only through inventions and discoveries, but through patience, cooperation, and the countless small moments shared between people. Now the night grows deeper. The stars continue shining, the wind continues moving. The ancient earth becomes peaceful once again, and as the final glow of the fire fades, you can rest knowing that the long human journey continues, carried forward through every generation that comes after. The sweet dreams.